Welcome to the Science of Sports Performance, where we discuss the real science of nutrition and exercise, helping you train smarter, fuel better, and perform at your very best. My name is Ben Pressler, and I'm currently an undergraduate student at Brigham Young University, majoring in both nutritional and exercise sciences. I'm pursuing my PhD with the goal of becoming a professor of sports nutrition. Today is going to be part 2 of our little 2-part mini-series about how I would write a exercise coaching plan. This 2-part series, if you did not tune into episode 3, is following 4 athletes and how I would write them both a nutrition coaching plan and an exercise coaching plan. If you did not listen to episode 3, I would definitely highly encourage it and thank you. And today we're going to be taking those same 4 athletes and we're going to be talking about how I would write them an exercise coaching program. Now, I understand that my current qualifications as just an undergraduate student might not be quite up to par with what you're used to from many other podcasts, but I assure you that I'm committed to discovering genuine scientific principle and that the information I share with you in this podcast will be as current, as accurate, and as research-based as possible. I thank you for joining me, and let's go ahead and get into this episode. Now, this episode I think might be a little bit different from episode 3, just in the sense that I want it to be a little less scripted. I don't script any of my episode, I write notes, but the thing about our last episode is I went over our athletes' nutrition, how they eat, and how I would want them to eat. And of course, when we go into our diet, I have been tracking food and, in the realm of nutrition for long enough that I kind of have a decent understanding of how many calories and how much protein are in lots of different foods, as well as what are good sources of different micronutrients. However, to sum up someone's entire day is not something that I can just do on the fly quick enough to make a, good podcast episode that would be worth listening to. So as I went over the athletes' current diets that they were eating, before I recorded the episode, I had to track everything, see what their calories were, see how much protein and fiber they were eating, see how many micronutrients they were consuming. And then as I sought to make changes, as I did for these athletes and as I do for my actual clients that I do coach, I made what I thought would be prudent changes, and then I had to reevaluate because sometimes I make all the changes that I think are going to be good, and there's still a couple targets we fall short from, and I need to make some more readjustments. So all that just to say that in episode 3, as I went over these athletes' nutrition, it was just very kind of already figured out. When we go into their exercise routines, as we will today, it's going to be a little simpler, a little easier, just because I guess there's not as much math involved in writing an exercise program. You don't really calculate somebody's volume, at least not with a calculator. You try and be mindful of it, of course, but you're not really, I don't need to write everything out and make sure that it works and go back and find all these different numbers for nutrients and so on. So today, as I look at these athletes' information that they've submitted to me, I really just kind of want to verbalize all my thoughts and really kind of give you a glimpse into the inside of my mind as I write an exercise program for all of these different individuals. Now, for those of you, again, who did not listen to episode 3, again, I would encourage you and would be grateful to you for going to listen to it, but I understand if you want to go ahead and continue this episode, or you're more interested in exercise, it's the last time I'll encourage you to go watch episode 3. But if you haven't seen it already, our 4 athletes that we covered last time cover 4 different goals. Our athletes were Noah, Ryan, Zach, and Marcus. Now, Noah is an 18-year-old soccer player. He just graduated high school. He's going to college now, and he doesn't want to gain weight. He doesn't want to lose weight. All he wants to do is improve his nutrition, be a little healthier, and really just improve his performance for his sport. Our second athlete was Ryan. Ryan is an HVAC worker, and really he just kind of identifies as a bodybuilder, but he is trying to bulk. He considers himself a hard gainer and doesn't think that he can eat enough and just has a really hard time growing. Of course, his main problem goes back to his nutrition, which we covered in episode 3. Our third athlete is Zach. Zach is a 32-year-old accountant. He tries to be as healthy as he can. He struggles with consistency in his workout routine and his diet. Really, he wants to lose a few pounds and just get a little healthier as well. So his goal is to lose weight. And then we're following Marcus. He's a 23-year-old former college football player. He was an offensive lineman, and so he is very, very heavy. He wants to lose a little bit of weight now that he's not playing football anymore. And we're just going to try and, he has to develop all brand new habits because he's not going to be in the college football scene anymore with all the coaches and resources that were there for him. So our 4 athletes that we're going over, again, their goals are to maintain body weight and simply improve sports performance. Then it is to bulk, to add lean muscle tissue, ideally mostly lean muscle tissue, not just weight, not just fat. Then with Zach is to lose weight, and with Marcus is to lose weight again, but more substantial amount of weight loss. Now, before we get into this, again, I should emphasize that I'm not a physical therapist. I am not a chiropractor. I am not an orthopedic specialist, obviously not some orthopedic surgeon. I'm not a doctor, not a physician, a clinician. I am just a coach, and that's really all I can claim to be. Of course, I haven't even graduated with my bachelor's yet, but really, I just want to emphasize that to let you know that my goal as a coach is to take healthy people or high-performing athletes and make them even healthier and even higher performers. Now, even if you don't consider yourself healthy because you are overweight, you don't have a disease, you don't have an injury, so in those senses, you are healthy, and I'm trying to take you from where you are to where you can be. I do not write nutrition plans for somebody with a nutrition-related illness that affects the way they need to eat. That is the job of a dietitian. It's not my job. And if your hip really, really hurts when you squat and you want to know how to get rid of it, I can, probably help you come up with exercises that will still train the muscles you want to train that might not hurt as much, but I don't know how to help your hip pain go away. I don't know how to make your spine pain go away and all those different things. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a chiropractor. And I need everyone to understand that. It's always very, very good to listen to the people who admit when they don't know how to do something. A lot of people who claim that they know everything about everything, I think know nothing about a lot of things. I'm not saying they don't have any knowledge, but I want you to know my limitations and what I can and cannot do as a coach. That being said, I do find myself to be a qualified coach. I know that I'm not a bachelor yet, but as I said, am committed to discovering genuine scientific principle. I love to read textbooks and articles and nutritional studies and exercise studies and see what these best tools are. I'm an athlete myself. I want to know what the best tools are for my performance, and I hope to educate and disseminate that knowledge to all of you guys. Before we get into our specific examples, there are some things that I wanted to talk about specifically when it comes to exercising and training as an athlete. Now, you might be familiar that many teams, college teams, sports teams, they will have strength and conditioning specialists. In fact, that's what I hope to test for as I do graduate with my bachelor's here in a couple of years, is to become a certified strength and conditioning specialist. That is the CSCS. And basically all that is it's someone who has their bachelor's degree in personal training rather than taking some 30 or 60-day course to become a certified personal trainer. They have their bachelor's degree in personal training. And I want to really kind of focus on that. They are a strength and conditioning specialist, right? And so the other thing you should know is that I'm not your coach. I might not know a ton about football or about gymnastics or about soccer and foot drills or about wrestling and all the technique there. I can't necessarily help you with the technique and those things, those specific movements that take a lot of practice and knowledge and experience in your sport. But what I can help you with is your strength and your conditioning. Again, of course, I'm not a strength and conditioning specialist yet, but that is my same knowledge pool. Now, the reason I say that is because there's a lot of ideas out there about how sort of bodybuilding or powerlifting style weight training. I've even heard people claim that, anything that uses a barbell is not functional. It's not functional training. And as an athlete, you shouldn't be interested in any of it because it's not functional, and you need to do functional movements and functional exercises, things with kettlebells and swings and things that are more explosive and rotational and that use your core. And I don't want to discredit that. I think that there is a lot of value to that, especially as it relates to what your goals are. And I'm not saying that athletes should avoid those things. I think they can be very beneficial for a lot of athletes in their sport. But I do want to encourage you not to ignore things with barbells, very traditional strength work, and those exercises that we know will help encourage hypertrophy, because functionality is sport specific. It's task specific even, right? People who really, really believe in the functional training might tell me that because I train for powerlifting and bodybuilding, I wouldn't be very functional and couldn't help them move perhaps a heavy appliance. And that's just not the case, because strength is universal. In fact, just the other day, actually, or a couple weeks ago now, I had someone come up and talk to me. They said, "Ben, what's your bench press PR?" But before I could even get the chance to answer, they said, "Of course, understanding that bench press doesn't really mean anything. It's not a great example of how strong you really are." I thought, well, what do you mean? "Oh, well, it's just, in case you ever have to lie flat on your back and press something in a straight line directly off your chest." I'm like, well, no, it's anytime that I need to do anything that involves having strong chest or shoulders. I think the bench press is very functional, and kind of got in a silly debate. Of course, I'm not going to go into too many details and things with that with someone who isn't interested in listening to me ramble about it. But you guys are here listening to me ramble about it, and for that, I thank you. Anyways, strength is universal. Anything I do, like a bench press, to strengthen my chest and my triceps, that strength in my chest and my triceps is going to be there anytime I need to use my chest and my triceps. So even if your sport might not be, exactly the linear path of a bench press exactly, you still can do the bench press, get very, very strong at it, and use that strength you've developed in your sport. Functionality is task specific, and strength is universal. My job as a coach is to help you with your strength. That is universal. Your coach's job is to help you with your functionality. The other thing I've noticed as well is that when people do claim functional strength, usually what they mean is just strength of a specific muscle. Usually what they mean is core strength or core stability, and that is a very functional thing to have. And yeah, you're right. Maybe you don't train rotational core strength in things like a bench press or a squat. That doesn't mean that a bench press or a squat aren't functional. It just means that there are functions that require strong rotational core strength, and that's something you can train for if you hope to. Another thing is a lot of functional movements are just things that are unstable. And again, that's task specific. Some athletes need things like that, and some athletes don't. I think a basketball player, a soccer player, for example, might benefit from balance work. A gymnast, actually, especially would benefit from things like balance and instability work, so they can try and be strong and prevent injury and all sorts of different agility scenarios. But again, I can probably help you train those muscles that are involved in those things, but it's up to your coach to decide if it's prudent for you to train in those ways. Functionality is task specific, strength is universal. The idea should be to do a little bit of strength work to get your muscles to where you want them to be for your sport, and then to do some functionality work in practice to get better at your sport. The best way to get better at your sport is to practice and play your sport. Another thing I want to talk about is some things for athletes to consider as they do think about how they're going to design an exercise routine for themselves. Now, again, I'm a coach. I work with athletes and I work with people to design them exercise training programs. You can hire me if you're interested in working with me directly, but really what I want is to just spread high quality education about these areas. That is the purpose of creating this podcast. I want to kind of peel back, the curtains and show you inside my mind and how I think. The purpose of this is hopefully if you listen to this whole episode, you might have a better idea of how to design your own program. So, you might think, oh, well, I don't need to consider anything. I'll just have my coach or my trainer tell me what to do. That's right. I would consider all these things and tell you what to do if you hired me, but I want to as well put out this high quality education. So some things for you to consider as an athlete as you are training is really just what sport do you play? What do your movement patterns look like in that sport? And then what adaptations are desirable for your sport? So for example, if you're a gymnast, one thing that's very common in gymnastics, especially male gymnastics, where they're doing things like the rings, is it's really all about your strength to your weight ratio. So you want to be really, really strong, but you're moving your body weight in all these different ways. So you want your body weights to be pretty low. You want your strength up and your body weight down. And for a lot of athletes, gymnasts, a lot of male gymnasts, I'll say, for example, I actually did gymnastics for a few years, middle school and high school, really enjoyed it. I love to do the rings. I was not incredible. I'm certainly going nowhere near the Olympics or anything, but it was a fun hobby of mine. But I love to do the rings. And in that sport, someone who specializes in doing the rings might train their legs relatively unoften, and they might want what a bodybuilder would consider chicken legs, small legs, because your legs can hold a lot of muscle tissue that gets very, very heavy. In the rings, you want to keep your legs straight and make them look good and presentable for the judges, but it's an upper body sport. And so you want upper body strength and you want your body weight low. A good way to manipulate that body weight equation is to have pretty small legs. So those are considerations to think of. So if you're a gymnast, you want to get really, really strong, not necessarily put on a ton of muscle mass where you don't have to. But another thing to consider there is your injury risk, right? So maybe you want strong legs because you are trying to get better at jumping high as you do the vault or your floor routine. You're trying to jump high in the air to do all your different sorts of flips. You want to get stronger legs, but maybe you're worried about the injury risk of heavy squats and heavy deadlifts as a powerlifter will do. Of course, if you're working with a good coach, there shouldn't be high injury risk in those things. But again, I understand, especially you have a history of past injuries in your spine or your knees or your hips. And so a consideration there might be the range of motion. If you listen to episode 2 about manipulating body composition, we talked about how to increase our muscle size and hypertrophy. And one of those big things that you can do is to get a big range of motion and stretch that muscle as far as possible. Now, if you're an athlete, for example, in gymnastics or maybe even track and field, who's trying to get stronger legs, but not necessarily bigger legs, but you want to train heavy, but you don't want to injure yourself, there's all these things going on. This is one of the cases I might actually recommend that someone does a partial range of motion squat. In powerlifting, for a squat to count, your hip joint has to pass below your knee joint, and if it doesn't, then the squat didn't count. However, if you're an athlete and your goal is not to have the highest 1 rep max squat, it's just to get stronger without getting injured, well, then maybe you want to do a partial range of motion squat where your legs don't even go to parallel and you just have perhaps a 90-degree angle at your knee, and then you want to get really, really strong at that. Some people might poke fun at it. I understand, especially powerlifters. But if your goal is to just get stronger legs for all the reasons that we've discussed, then that might be prudent for you. Another example is a sport like American football. In a sport like football, for many positions, whether you're a lineman or whether you're a wide receiver, a quarterback, a running back especially, strength and size are beneficial for you. So if you're a running back, you want to be heavy enough and have enough size on you that you kind of have a ton of momentum when you're trying to run through somebody and not get knocked over. You also do want to be very strong for those same reasons. You might not necessarily want to train for just one or the other. And so in that case, be very beneficial to have high muscle strength and high muscle size. So you could train in a way that would reflect for that. I think someone like an American football player would probably be training a lot like a bodybuilder or a powerlifter. And then another example could be something like golf. Now, I'm not saying golfers are unathletic. I don't want anyone to think that and start getting hate from golfers. But if you're a golfer, it's your sport is how you swing the club to the ball. And that is a full body thing. You do need to be fit. You should have a good amount of muscular strength. But all I'm trying to say is that in a sport like golf, you don't necessarily need to have a very specific way of training that is specific to your movement pattern in golf, because it's just a swing. Now, I understand you're going to want strong hips and strong legs and strong arms and strong shoulders, strong back and chest, everything. But in the case, like if someone who is a professional golfer came to me and asked for training, then I really would probably give them a rather generic program that would help them get strong and fit and healthy. Just because with those benefits and those adaptations, it can help them as they work with their coach. I think golf actually might be a great example. I can help you get strong. I can help you become fit and conditioned, but I don't know how to swing a golf club. If you've seen me ever swing a golf club, you know that for sure. I'm terrible at golf. My job is not to help you with your sport-specific functions, but rather to help with your muscular strength and adaptations as you perform in that sport. Now, with all of those things underway, we're going to go ahead and get into our 4 examples of how I would train athletes. So the first thing I'd like to do is once again read for you guys my new client questionnaire. So whenever I take on a new athlete, I have them fill out a whole big long questionnaire. It is sort of long, so it takes a few minutes to do, but it's really just very thorough. I want to get a really good glimpse into your preferences and your training and your eating habits so that I know how best to help you. Now, you have the option, if you do want to work with me, of being a nutrition client or being an exercise client, or you can do both. But even if you only want to do one or the other, I'm still going to ask you all of the questions. Now, the information about your nutrition might not be so important if I'm just going to be coaching you on your exercise. However, if you tell me that you just can't seem to make progress and you think it's your workout routine, and then I do look at your nutrition and it's just a bunch of Rice Krispie treats and fruit and very low protein, and then I might understand, and frankly, I might try and encourage you to work with me about your nutrition as well so that you can start seeing better progress in your workouts and in your exercise. However, your exercise habits are very, very important as I coach you nutritionally, so I know how we can fuel you for the exercise that you do. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and read the entire new athlete questionnaire. I might go into it in a little better detail in episode 3 if you do want to get into all the nuances of why I ask what I do. Here, I'm just going to kind of read it straight through. But then I'll provide you the answers to these questions that these athletes gave me, and then we'll get into how I would design an exercise coaching program for them. So first, I want to know very basic information about you. I want to know your name, your gender, male or female, your height, age, weight. If you have a goal weight, I'd like to know that as well. And then I want to know your occupation as it relates to your activity level. So maybe you're a college student, maybe you are a professional athlete, maybe you're a desk worker, maybe you are a HVAC technician like Ryan is going to be here. Then I want to know what your main goals are. Are you really just trying to focus on losing fat tissue? Are you trying to focus on building muscle tissue? Do you want to increase your strength? Do you just want to, optimize your athletic performance? Do you want to live longer and have better cardiovascular health and more energy? Next, what motivates you to reach your goals? Are you motivated by your family? You just want to have better health? Do you have an upcoming event? Do you just love your sport? You want to be better at your sport? And then I want to know about what some of the obstacles are that have been keeping you from reaching your goals in the past. Some people struggle with consistency. Some people have really bad food cravings. Some people just feel like they don't have the education they need to do what's best for themselves. Then getting into the specific questions about exercise. What kind of workout experience do you have? For example, do you exercise regularly, or did you used to play sports back in high school or in college? Do you play sports currently? Then, of course, I want them to describe to me or send me their current workout routine if they have one at all. I want to know, what kind of equipment do you have access to? Do you have a home gym? Do you have access to a commercial gym, your school's student gym, or whatever it might be? What time constraints do you have? Some people can't train for more than an hour a day, and that's fine. How many days a week can you train? Do you have any injuries that you are sensitive to while training? How close are you to the facilities you will train at? What forms of exercise do you find most enjoyable? This could be that you really like swimming as a form of cardio. You really enjoy rock climbing. It could be just that you enjoy going on walks in the park with your family. Or the answer to this question could mean that you prefer lifting with barbells as opposed to dumbbells. Or, I just want to know in this question, what do you enjoy and you are likely to stick to? What forms of exercise do you find most enjoyable? Nutrition, again, we'll go over very briefly, but do you have any metabolic illnesses like diabetes or PCOS or hypothyroidism or hypogonadism? How much money are you able to spend on groceries each week? How many meals do you like to eat each day? How often do you tend to eat out each week? Do you use or are you willing to use protein powder? Do you have any food allergies or sensitivities? Are there any foods that you strongly dislike? Do you follow any special food patterns, such as vegetarian or religious guidelines? How much of a change are you willing to make to your current diet habits? Ideally, we can make some minor changes that will have a large impact, but for some, it is necessary to make a full turnaround. What are some foods that you love and would like to keep in your diet? What are your favorite protein sources, such as meat, poultry, fish, plant-based sources, or dairy? What are your favorite vegetables, not including potatoes, corn, or onions? Name 3 to 5. What are your favorite fruits? Name 3 to 5. Do you drink alcohol? If so, how many drinks per week? And lastly, I'd like for you to track your current diet for 2 days. Do not change anything. Do not try to impress me. Track your diet as it currently is so that I can get a feel for what habits and structure you go by. You do not need to calculate your calories or anything, just make a list of foods. Try to be specific. For example, don't say, I had a ham sandwich. Say, I had a ham sandwich with 2 slices of white bread, 1 slice of cheese, 2 servings of lunch meat, and mayo on both sides. If you got a coffee or drink, what size? If you dipped apples in peanut butter, how much peanut butter? Then from this point, after I have received all the answers to this question, I have a Google form that I'll send you. You've sent me your workout routine and your 2 days of eating via email. At that point, I'd like to go over it all, I'll track everything, see how many calories and nutrients you're eating. And then I want to schedule a 30-minute Zoom call with you. And then I'm going to kind of go over all the different things that you've said. Oftentimes I'll have some follow-up questions, and a lot of time in this call as well, I'll already have kind of some ideas of tools that might help you and some strategies that I would like to take. And from that point, I just kind of want to get your opinions on it all. If I say, maybe we should try intermittent fasting, and you say, absolutely not, no way. Good, because I'd hate to write you a meal plan that has you intermittent fasting when that's something you have strong opinions against. So I'll kind of, test the water on a few things. I love it when I have an athlete who's very willing to try whatever I think is best for them. But anyways, after that call, get your opinions about everything that I'm thinking, and then I will write you your plans. Now, I do have different coaching options. Of course, I can just write you the plan and send it to you. From there, though, you're kind of on your own. I want to try and give you as many tools as possible in that plan to help educate you and help you, make good habits so that you can improve your exercise and your nutrition in the future. But for all of these athletes, we're going to assume that I'm going to be ongoingly coaching them. Ongoingly, is that a real word? I'm not sure. But I'm going to be coaching them, week to week, checking in with them. And the benefit to that really is that if I coach you for a month, for 2 months, each week when I check in, again, of course, I'm going to try and write you the best meal plan and the best exercise plan as possible when I first send it to you. However, there are going to be some things that I just don't get right and things that you just don't enjoy, and you can tell me that. You can give me that feedback. I'll make adjustments each week. I send you new meal plans, new exercise routines that are slightly adjusted. And then in the span of, usually a couple months, we have something that's really, really fine-tuned that works really, really well for you and that you're seeing good results with. So with all that, let's go in and let's talk about Noah. Noah is our 18-year-old male soccer player. He's 5'11", 170 pounds. From a progress picture he sent me, he is about 15% body fat. Again, that's not something that I care to be super, super, super accurate on, but I like to get a good idea. Noah's goal is to perform better at soccer, is all. He doesn't want to lose any muscle, and so he wants to kind of stay exactly at his weight. Remember, his goal is to just maintain, but he just wants to perform better at soccer without losing any muscle. His current routine is that he lifts 3 times a week and he runs 3 times a week and has soccer practice 5 days a week. So in the mornings, 6 days a week, he's either going to do a weightlifting workout or he's going to go on a run. And then he has soccer practice 5 days a week in the afternoons. That, for us, is not so important to know. That's more for fueling him for soccer practice in the evenings. We care more about, in the case of this episode, just his lifting and running. Noah is motivated by his love for the sport. He just doesn't know much about healthy eating or exercise habits. He's played soccer since middle school. He has access to a standard commercial gym. He spends about an hour on each of his weightlifting workouts, and he does not have any injuries that he's sensitive to and lives only a few minutes from his gym. And perhaps he is now going to lift at the college's gym where he goes, and he just lives a few minutes away from it in the dorm rooms. He sent me his current exercise routine, and again, he lifts 3 days a week, and on those 3 days a week, he does a push, a pull, and a legs. So he's trained everything, hypothetically. So let's look at it. On his push workout, we can say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the exact days don't care. His push workout on Monday, he does a flat barbell bench press, then he does a dumbbell bench press, then he does a shoulder press, next he does an incline barbell bench press, then he's going to do a tricep push down, and then lateral delt raises. His Wednesday workout, his pull, is first a barbell row, then he's going to do lat pull downs, he's going to do chin ups next, he does dumbbell bicep curls, then he does cable bicep curls, and then he does an upright row, and then lastly on Friday on his leg day, he does barbell squats, he does walking lunges, he does box jumps, and then he does calf raises. And that's it. That's his routine. Now, for a push-pull legs, I really mostly prefer that workout split for somebody who's working out 6 days a week and is repeating that twice. And if that was the case, it really ought to be a hypertrophy-based program. So your goal is to grow bigger muscles. For him, Noah is a soccer player, and I think that he is going to be a great example of somebody who just should be trying to get strong in compound movements, multi-joint movements, and that will benefit him. Of course, he's an 18-year-old boy. He wants to have big muscles and look strong, but just help him in his sport of soccer. So let's get into this a little more specifically. First off, on his push day, he starts out with a barbell bench press, which I think is a great exercise. I love it. You could argue that it's not the best for hypertrophy, and I would agree with you, but for a little bit of strength in your chest and triceps, it's awesome. The thing is that next, after his barbell bench press, he's doing a dumbbell bench press. Now, I find redundancies like that a little silly. Perhaps you could say that he's doing his barbell bench press because he wants to get a very strong barbell bench press, like a powerlifter. In that case, that's great. And then he does a little bit of dumbbell bench press work after for more hypertrophy style training. That's actually something that I will do myself. And if that's kind of your approach, I would fully support it. And I think that's great. However, especially if you're just trying to work on a goal of hypertrophy or whatever it is, if both exercises are meant to suit the same goal and you're doing them right after each other, then the one just fatigues the other. And the one that you do second, you're just not going to do as well at. And I would just find it better to put most focus in one exercise or the other, at least on one training day. If you wanted to alternate these exercises each week, so maybe week 1 he does the barbell bench press and goes into the rest, and then week 2 he does the dumbbell bench press rather, and then he switches back and forth, I think that'd be a great tool. Again, I don't hate this. I'm not telling you shouldn't do it, but I just want you guys to kind of be aware of some of the stipulations and nuances of this. And then next he goes into his shoulder press. Now, this is something that I have just come across and learned throughout my career. This is kind of anecdotal, but especially as he's working out 3 days a week, I would like him to do sort of more of an upper-lower type of a deal, or a way that I will actually phrase it is a vertical and a horizontal. So that's something we should talk about quickly. There are 6 fundamental compound movements. Again, a compound movement is some sort of movement that involves 2 joints. So a bench press and a shoulder press involve my shoulder joint and my elbow joint. So it is a compound, whereas a lateral delt raise or tricep extension is going to be just my shoulder joint or just my elbow joint, and that is therefore an isolation. The 6 main compound movements that everybody needs to do in their workout routine is the squat, so that is a press with your legs, then some sort of a hinge. Commonly this is a deadlift, so it is a sort of a pulling motion with your legs, something to work your posterior chain, your glutes, and your hamstrings. Then you need to do a vertical press and a vertical pull. So that means a vertical press is a pressing movement where your arms move up and down. So that is a shoulder press. And then a vertical pull is the opposite of that. It's a lat pull down. Next is a horizontal press, like a bench press, and then a horizontal pull, like a row. Hypothetically, doing those 6 movements, you've trained just about every muscle that you can. Because they're compound movements, they work a lot of different muscle groups. They are all tied for first place. If you were to ask me, what's the number one exercise I should include in my workout routine, I would say there are 6 exercises tied for first place. You need all 6 of them at a minimum. Anyways, going into that, a common thing that I will like to recommend to athletes is to do sort of a horizontal and a vertical split. So what you're doing is, rather than doing a push and a pull, you're doing your vertical push and pull and your horizontal push and pull. Because if you do your horizontal push, for example, he's done his bench press, then your chest and your triceps might be tired, but your back and your biceps are not at all. And so you can go in and do your rows next, your horizontal pull, and be just as strong as you've ever been. And that's awesome. So you can, make better progress on that, see more realistic progressive overload. And then the next day or 2 days later, as you've kind of recovered from that, then you can do your vertical press, your shoulder press, and your vertical pull, your lat pull down or your chin up or whatever it is. Then you're just kind of really being able to give more energy and more focus to each and every one of these lifts and improve them better. You don't have to do it. Some people don't like it. They're creatures of habit. I understand. If you were just asking me, though, what I think might be most ideal for his case, that's actually something I'd really recommend, as he's only training 3 days a week. Now, again, the reason I brought that up is because he's done his horizontal presses, his bench press and his dumbbell bench press, and then he's going into his shoulder press. That's something I did for a long time, all throughout middle school and high school. I kind of lifted in middle school, but I guess in high school, I really started lifting, and that's what I did. I did a push and I did a pull. What I noticed is that my shoulder press was never very strong, and I just assume that's because shoulders are smaller than chests, right? And so I think I got to the point where I could do a dumbbell shoulder press with like 50-pound dumbbells, and I thought that was pretty awesome. I was pretty happy with that. But then I kind of heard of this ideology of the vertical and the horizontal and separating them, because your triceps and even your shoulders a little bit are going to be tired from heavy bench presses. And so you're not going to be able to do your shoulder press as best as you could if you did them on completely separate days. So I started that. I thought that was a cool idea. And within just a couple months of getting used to that, I could use the 70-pound dumbbells. Not necessarily because I got 20 pounds stronger at shoulder pressing, but because I wasn't fatigued as I was doing them. So I went up in such weight, and that means that I'm getting a better stimulus on my shoulders as I use that heavier weight. So, the 70s versus the 50s. I think it's a great idea for a lot of people to at least try and see how you respond and see how you like it. Continuing on his Monday workout, after shoulder press, he's doing incline press. And here we're still kind of running in the same thing. He's doing just a lot of pressing, and the later exercises he does that are presses, he's just getting tired and not giving them as much energy. So I just like to see a little bit of rearranging. For him, in his case, as he's only lifting 3 days a week, there's some of that's going to be unavoidable. Whereas if you're lifting 6 days a week, you could do perhaps a push-pull legs. And on your first push exercise of the week, you could do a flat press. And on your second push exercise or workout, rather, of the week, then you could do something like an incline, kind of change the angles up. So very similar exercises, but those little differences like flat versus an incline press. Then he's going to be doing his tricep push down and his lateral delt raise. Both of those are great. I have no issues with them. Tricep overhead extensions have great implications, especially for hypertrophy. There's a good stretch, but I really think, I'll say it 1,000 times, consistency is the most important thing, and you're going to be most consistent and give the most energy to the things that you enjoy. So even though there might be some tricep exercise that's technically more optimal, I don't really care if the person doesn't enjoy doing that, because they're going to give more energy and be more consistent and therefore get better results from perhaps a suboptimal exercise just because they enjoy it better and they're going to give it more energy and focus. Next up, let's talk about his pull workout on Wednesday. He starts out with a barbell row. I don't love barbell rows. I really enjoy doing rows on a machine. I love anything that's chest supported. When you're doing any sort of a row movement, I will say first of all that there's a couple different ways to do a row. First is you could do a low row with your elbows by your sides, or you could kind of flare your arms up and have your elbows up at a T by your shoulders, and that's going to work more your upper back, where the low row is going to work more your upper lats. So different muscles worked there. The thing is, your back is pretty strong. So like those cable row stations where it has the foot plate and the bench that you sit on, and then you pull the cable back. I mean, you're oftentimes strong enough to do it, but I like to kind of compare it to like doing a bench press without the bench underneath your back, and you have to hold yourself up from your legs with your abs. You're going to be limited in a real way by how much your abs can hold up and let you bench press, more so than your chest. So for that reason, I do love chest-supported rows. Again, your back is in your posterior chain that's supporting that rowing motion is stronger than your abs that would hypothetically be supporting a bench press. So it's not a perfect example, but if you do have a good chest-supported option, I really like it. Unfortunately, a lot of chest-supported options might only give you the option of a low row or a very narrow row. And like I said, that works your lats, which is also worked by a lat pull down. And so like if you could only do one row, I would have it be a higher up row that's going to work, your rhomboids and your traps in your upper back, as well as, your rear delts and things. So a barbell row, it's not my favorite, depending on what equipment he has. I might have him change that, but again, I could be working with an athlete who only has a home gym, and the only way he could possibly do a row was to do a barbell row. And if that's the case, that's great. He's going to just get strong at it, get used to it, and as long as he's training hard with intensity and good form, he's going to make great results. So a barbell row, maybe not my favorite. If that's all you got, then I would say try and keep your elbows high up there. Just know what muscle you're trying to work. I suppose in his case, he doesn't have any other row in his workout, so it really ought to be an upper back row. And so just have a wider grip, flare your elbows up, and make yourself a big letter T. Then he's going to be doing lat pull downs. It's a very classic. Of course, there's different ways to do this exercise. You might see different debates about whether you should do your pull downs in the frontal plane or the sagittal plane. And all that just means is if you should do your rows like with your arms straight out in front of you and kind of pull in a curve close to your body. I think that's a great way to work your lats. But then the other thing you can do is have your arms out by your side and put your elbows like down to your hips. It's just a different plane. Now, I know that those who are listening on audio apps can't see what I'm doing with my hands, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can. Different planes of pulling with your lats. It doesn't matter. What do you like? What are you going to stick to? What are you going to give a lot of energy and focus? It's all really going to work your lats at the end of the day. It doesn't really need to be a huge debate, in my opinion. Now, going back to the same idea of redundancy that I talked about with those presses on his push workout, right after he does pull downs, he's doing his chin-ups. And maybe the reason he does chin-ups specifically is just because he wants to see how many chin-ups he can do. And if that's the case, that's great. If he's doing it for the purpose of strength and hypertrophy, it's less stable than a pull down, and you're going to be fatigued at your chin-ups from the pull down. You might as well just do another set of pull downs or whatever. Again, if he really is passionate about keeping it, he can keep it, but it's not something that I would personally write into a workout program to do pull downs and then chin-ups after. Next, he's doing dumbbell bicep curls, which is great. There's lots of different ways to do the dumbbell bicep curl. I've actually considered making one of my future episodes, one about sort of kinesiology and biomechanics and how to bias and stretch and whatever, all these different muscles. And I think that would be really valuable information. I just don't know how well it fits the podcast format, so I don't know how much I'm going to try to do as I talk about these exercises, but I'll do my best, and hopefully you guys can let me know how it's received, if it's understandable at all. I would say, as you do any sort of a bicep curl, I really like to see a good stretch at the bottom, just because there are sort of horror stories about people's bicep tendons tearing. And you might think, well, your bicep tendons don't tear if you don't extend them all the way. Well, the thing about that then should be that as you start and progress with your weight and your tendons wouldn't snap under that load, you should train with that full range of motion and allow your tendons to get accustomed to that and get strengthened in that range of motion. And then as you get stronger, it actually kind of strengthens your tendons and reduces the risk overall, as well as just long muscle lengths are really the best for hypertrophy. We've seen that in lots and lots of different studies. So I'd love to see something where he's getting a full stretch and full range of motion on that bicep curl. Another thing to know is especially as he is doing a dumbbell curl and your wrist is free to rotate, just because of the way that the bicep tendon attaches to the radius, it actually attaches on, I guess, sort of the inside by your pinky. And so your bicep can actually function and contract a little further by rotating your pinky upwards. So if you started with more a neutral grip or a palm down grip in the curl like most people do, then as you get to the top, you can kind of focus on rotating your pinky. In fact, if you were to look at somebody just by rotating my hand like this, you can see the way it changes the length of my bicep. Again, if you're listening on the audio format, perhaps you could try it yourself since you can't see me. Just put your arm up by your side like you're flexing and showing off your bicep, and then just rotate your hand back and forth like this, and you'll see the bicep change distance. Because now some people will argue that you can train then your bicep just by holding dumbbells and rotating your hands, and they're not wrong, but that's a silly thing to do. Just because range of motion is beneficial, it's kind of necessary, and you're missing out on a huge bit of range of motion in the actual curl just by trying to train pronation of your hand. Anyways, good technique for a dumbbell bicep curl. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense. Next, after his dumbbell bicep curl, he's doing the cable bicep curl. Again, perhaps there's a little bit of redundancy there. In this case, it's not bad. It's 2 exercises, right? And the nice thing about cable bicep curls is that the cable machine is where the resistance comes from, and the pulleys of the machine and everything are kind of changing the direction of pull. So if you're just using a dumbbell or a barbell, the weight is always just pulling right down. Whereas if you have a cable machine where the pulley is set, I guess, at your waist height or wherever you're pulling from, then the weight could be pulling directly against your arm at the bottom of the movement rather than in the middle or at the top with gravity and a dumbbell. So that could actually be a really good implication, is to train with a dumbbell curl and a cable curl, train these, I guess, bias and put most of the load at these different portions of that range of motion. And then he's doing an upright row. The upright row is great for the traps. He's already done lateral delt work. I'm okay if he does it twice in a week. And twice in a week is actually pretty good volume. If you look at, he's only doing 3 workouts a week, and then he's training one muscle twice a week, maybe you might choose to put a little better focus on something else. But again, it's cool to have big shoulders. It's good for his traps to do the upright rows as well. Maybe you could say just to do a shrug instead. You probably would be able to overload that and go a little heavy easier, but I like that. I'm not happy with it. I am happy with it. I am not unhappy with it. I apologize. Lastly, his Friday workout is legs. He starts with a squat. I love the squat. Some people don't. I do. And again, he's doing a barbell squat, like a barbell back squat, but any sort of a squat, a machine squat, a hack squat, a front squat, it's all a squat. Squats are good for you. Anyways, squat's great. It's going to get him strong legs for running and soccer. Next up, he does a walking lunge, though. And this is really where you get into that redundancy thing. Like, once you've done heavy barbell squats, lunges just don't do much for you, especially a walking lunge. It feels like more of a conditioning and an aerobic type exercise, as well as especially if you're holding like a dumbbell as opposed to any other form of resistance. Your forearms are going to get fatigued. And so as a conditioning movement, walking lunges are not bad. But if we're just doing a strength workout, I personally will never tell you to do a walking lunge if your goal is, strength and hypertrophy. Take that how you will. You can do it if you like. I'm just saying that I personally wouldn't program it. Next up, he does a box jump, which is a great plyometric. It's not really going to be for strength and hypertrophy, but it's a great way to train. Happy with it. And then he does calf raises, again, which are really, really good. The research does show that it's better to do calf raises with a straight leg. Lots of gyms have a bent knee calf raise. Basically, you sit in the seat, and then you put your feet on the platform, and then the weight goes on top of your knees. And that is beneficial for the soleus muscle. The soleus is a muscle underneath the gastrocnemius of the calf, which is what's on the outside, what you can see. And the soleus works when the knee is bent. In fact, that's a great way, I got a plug in here. As you're doing your warm-ups, if you want to stretch your calf, try and stretch your calf with a straight leg, and that's really going to stretch your gastrocnemius. And then keep your ankle at the same position, but then come down and bend your knee, and you'll feel it stretch a different part of your calf, and that's going to be your soleus underneath. However, the soleus is trained, and we see it get similar strength and muscle gains from a standing calf raise, similar enough from a seated calf raise, whereas the gastrocnemius does not really get a good stimulus enough that we see good growth and good strengthening from it on a seated calf raise. If the only thing your gym has is a seated calf raise, then it's probably going to be easier to do that than, well, obviously it's going to be better to do that than nothing. I don't like doing a freestanding barbell calf raise. If you have a Smith machine, that's good because you get that stability and balance, but trying to do a freestanding barbell calf raise would be super miserable and hard. And I don't like that idea, so I'd probably do that over nothing. But if you have something that you can do a straight leg on, even if that's just like a leg press machine and then you do calf raises in it, I am going to recommend that completely. But then the last thing I want to note about his workout program is that he hasn't included any sort of a hip hinge or a deadlift. And maybe he doesn't want to do a deadlift specifically, but like his posterior chain and his hamstrings haven't been worked at all. So at the very, very, very least, what I would like to do for Noah is to have him do some sort of a hamstring curl in a machine. In fact, it has been and is becoming again very popular for strength and conditioning specialists, for things like college athletes, to have those athletes do Nordic curls. And Nordic curls is basically where you have your knee on a pad just for comfort, and then you lock your feet and your ankles into place with a heavy weight or a special machine. And then basically you're doing a body weight hamstring curl, and they are incredibly challenging. I am not even strong enough to do one with my own body weight yet. I'm training them, and they're hard. So if you ever see an athlete that can do several reps, they are a very, very strong athlete. And your hamstrings are very involved in running, especially sprinting, because the knee bends backwards to run. And so strong hamstrings are really, really good for an athlete. So I would like him to do some sort of a hamstring curl at minimum, hopefully a hamstring curl and a hip hinge or a deadlift of some sort, whether that's a stiff leg deadlift or Romanian deadlift, just something for his posterior chain to get that stimulus in addition to the squatting and the lunges and the things that he's doing. So again, I understand that in the audio format, you probably haven't followed this super well. I mean, as well as on YouTube. You guys might not understand exactly. I haven't rewritten him a program. And I guess I don't think I can for the sake of time, but I've kind of given you all my implications of what I think he should do. Just looking at what I do have written down for him, I'd probably say the best thing to do is rather than do a push-pull legs, I'll have him do a vertical horizontal and legs. And then I'll have him do on his, let's say his horizontal workout, we'll have him do a bench press or a dumbbell bench press. He can alternate as he chooses. I probably won't have him keep the incline press just because he wants to be sensitive to his time. Then I'll have him do his horizontal pull, so that's his row. Again, if he has a machine, a chest supported especially, or at the very least I'd prefer a cable to a barbell row, I'll have him do his barbell row next. And then he can choose if he wants to kind of train his rear and his lateral delts at the end of this workout, or if he wants to train his biceps and triceps. I've already talked about the implications for those exercises. Then on his second workout, his Wednesday workout is now his vertical workout, so he's going to do pull downs, and I wouldn't program him chin-ups after those pull downs unless that was something he was passionate about, wanted to get better at chin-ups. Then I'll have him do his vertical pressing, which is a shoulder press, and hopefully he should be very strong at that. And then at this point, whether he trained his shoulders or his arms on Monday, he will train whichever one he didn't train on Monday today, on Wednesday. Then for his leg workout, I am going to take out the walking lunge. I'll have him do squats. And then let's just say for simplicity, I'm going to cut him some slack and not have him do deadlifts. I'll just have him do a hamstring curl. Then I'll have him do box jumps and calf raises. I would love to see him do a deadlift as well for time's sake, but we will see how that goes. And then he also could do a leg extension if he wanted a little more volume for his quads in addition to the squat. We know that he did do the squat and the walking lunge, so technically he probably has the time and energy to do a little bit more quad movement. My first priority for him is to get his deadlift or his hamstrings involved. And then if he wants, he could do a leg extension, but the squat is going to be enough to grow his legs just fine. Now, before we get into our second example, Ryan, who's trying to bulk and add muscle, I made this list, and I'm just kind of realizing now that I don't really know exactly where I want to put this into this episode, so I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. I guess I made a hierarchy workout, or a hierarchy list of all the different workouts and exercises that you could do. And basically, as I was writing somebody a list of their exercises that they're going to do, as I'm writing someone a workout routine, what exercises am I going to include? And basically, in my opinion, you should not include any of these workouts in your plan unless all of the others above them have been included as well. So, to start out are those 6 movements that I've already described, the essential 6 compound movements. So that is your squat, your hinge, your vertical press, vertical pull, horizontal press, and horizontal pull. Now, again, that's hypothetically worked pretty much every single muscle that we have. However, my number 2 is actually going to be lateral delt raise. So your lateral deltoids, I'm sure that's something that we're all pretty familiar with, but your lateral deltoid has not necessarily been worked through those big 6 movements. So I do want to add something that's going to add that in there for strength. And really, many people just want that to look good and bigger, and I totally understand that. But also for the sake of it's your strength and your shoulder movement, we're going to train your lateral delts next. Then, At third place is a bicep curl, and fourth place is a tricep curl. Perhaps I could have made those tied for third place, but I just feel like your triceps really do get worked well just by doing your horizontal and vertical pressing, whereas your biceps work okay, but they never really get like a full contraction in a lot of cases, so maybe they're a little more important than a tricep curl. But I think most people who are going to include one are going to include the other, so they can kind of be written on the same line. Next up, I want to see a leg curl. So that is a hamstring curl. And the reason that is going to be next, and especially so far over something like a leg extension, is just because even after you've done the deadlift, not all of your hamstring has been worked. So the hamstrings themselves have 3 muscles, but there's 4 components. So those 3 muscles are the biceps femoris. Literally just kind of means like the bicep of the leg, curls your leg. But then there's the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus. So all 3 of those muscles, they're going to cross over the knee joint and the hip joint. So if you did something like a deadlift, especially a stiff leg or Romanian deadlift, they're all going to contract to help hinge your body upwards. However, the biceps femoris actually has a long head and a short head, which kind of means that there's a shorter portion of it that attaches to the bone before it crosses the hip joint. And so there is that small portion of your hamstrings that if you just do extension movements with your hamstrings is never really actually going to get a super good stimulus. And so what I would want to see you do is some sort of a leg curl. You need to do some sort of curling of the knee to work that short head of the biceps femoris. So that is kind of my next priority, as I just talked about with Noah, a Nordic curl, a hamstring extension, and that's really going to help in his sport because, as we said, running and the bending of that knee is a big component of the hamstrings, and if you're not training that, then that short head of the hamstring, or the short head of the biceps femoris, is not going to be really able to pull its weight. Next up, I want to see you do some sort of a calf raise. Again, you haven't really trained your calves just by doing something like a squat, so that's kind of my next up. Then I want to see you do some sort of an abdominal crunch. Now, there's lots of different ab exercises. We're actually going to go into them in a little bit, talking about some of our, I think in Zach's plan, I'll probably talk a little bit more about ab training and the nuances of it. But I want you to do some sort of a heavy ab crunch. It's a very common thing for people to, kind of advertise, get a 6-pack quick with this 6-minute ab workout where you're doing flutter kicks and bicycle crunches. And those can be prudent for athletes who need to get more endurance in their core and in their abdominal muscles. But if you're just trying to get your abs stronger and bigger, especially, you just need to do some sort of a heavy crunch in a very common, more like 8 to 12 rep range, whereas many other exercises have you do it in the 30 to 50 to 100 rep range, which I think is crazy. Again, there could be implications for that, but if your goal is some sort of a strength or hypertrophy, you should not be in that high of a rep range. The goal when doing this ab crunch is just to bring the rib cage closer to the pelvis. It's not to even bend at the hip. All it is bring the rib cage close to the pelvis because that's what the abdominals really do. Now, I do want to point out that I'm at number 7 on my list. I have 15 total workouts on here. I just want to point out that from here, the list gets kind of shaky. I have it in like a personal preference order, but it's really nothing. You could kind of flop some of these around depending on your goals, is all I want to say. My number 8, I have a rear delt movement. Your rear delts definitely get a lot of work from things like rows and lat pull downs, but they also can be pretty hard to grow, so some strict rear delt work might be very prudent. Your traps, some sort of a shrug is going to be next, assuming you're doing some sort of a hinge where you're holding the bar, or again, even in your rows, you're probably getting some trap involvement there, but a trap raise might be good next. Then I'd love to see your forearms work, some sort of a forearm crush or a forearm, curl where you're extending and flexing your wrist itself rather than just your fingers. Next up, I'm happy to see dips. I don't think everyone has to include dips, but it can be really good for your triceps, a good compound movement for your triceps, as well as your lower chest. I know that's a very common thing for people to want to include. Then I'll say an upper lat row. So I kind of talked about that earlier. If you do a row with your elbows close to your body and you pull it low, that's going to work more so your upper lats. Because the purpose of the lats is to pull the elbow to the hip in like an arc around your body. And so if you're doing a lat pull down, the lower lats are going to have the best leverage to pull, and you're going to be doing a lot of the work. Whereas when you get lower, or to work more so the upper lats, your arm can keep going, your elbow keep going to your hip more so than it does oftentimes on a lat pull down. And so if you were to continue that, that's a much more this motion of a low row, then it's going to be working more your upper lats. Again, for a long time, I actually only ever did an upper back row and a lat pull down. I didn't do anything for my upper lat specifically in a row, and I saw great results. You don't need to do them, but that can be a great another back exercise to add if you want to. Then is some sort of exercise for your glutes. Sometimes you might see like a what even is it called? I don't do them, so I don't remember. Just like a hip thrust is what I'm thinking of. I was wanting to say like a glute extension, but it's a hip thrust where, get in a Smith machine, put your back on a bench, and then you just thrust your hips up with a ton of weight. It's not something I do. I don't care for it. My glutes get strong enough from deadlifts and squats, and I really don't care about the size of them. I am interested in classic physique bodybuilding, where at least at my amateur level, your glutes are covered. Nobody needs to see them. I don't like to train glutes, but I know a lot of people do. Especially, it's a very common thing, I think, in the female side of the fitness industry to have glute workouts. That's something you want. If that's part of your goal, then I support that. I will write that for you. I just don't do them personally. Then will be something for your hip flexors. So this is where you are actually lifting your legs. You'll often see hip flexor exercise written as ab exercises. But again, the abs, the job is to bring the pelvis to the rib cage or the rib cage to the pelvis. So like a leg lift where you're bringing the leg up. I'd oftentimes will use some of your abs, but really it's a hip flexor exercise. They're good, and especially for athletes, they're really good for sprinters. I think that you should include them there. And then something for your lower back. I do lower back workouts often. And I know I've admitted to you that there are several exercises above lower back here on the list that I don't do, but I do a lot of lower back work just because I have hurt my back is deadlifting a couple times, deadlifting and power cleaning. That doesn't mean that those are dangerous. It just means that I have gotten hurt doing them. They can be very safe, and I just try and do lower back extensions to try and keep my lower back healthy and strong enough that it will not get injured. But you don't have to do them because you do get them trained from squats and from deadlifts and a hip thrust as well. And then anything below, I didn't even write on this list, but below my number 15 would be any sort of a biasing workout. So you might see posts on social media, people trying to teach you about exercising. They're like, oh, well, you can do a bicep curl this way or this way or this way, and you can do a tricep extension this way, this way, this way, and your arms at all these different angles and positions, and people say, oh, you flip your hands the other way, and it changes all these different things. Those are going to be biasing workouts because you're trying to bias a certain portion of the muscle. You can include them if you want to. My best advice is just to find whichever one you like the best and just do a lot of that. But if you want to include some biasing workouts past then, you can. I don't put a big emphasis on them in my training. I might not necessarily go to put a big emphasis on them in someone else's training unless they have a strict hypertrophy bodybuilding type goal, but they are possible and not necessarily a bad idea. And that's that. That's the end of that list. So let's go ahead and go into our next example. Hopefully we have so much kind of talked about and out of the way that these other ones go relatively quickly. We will see. So Ryan is our 25-year-old male who works as an HVAC contractor. So it seems like he has a pretty active job. He's 5'9". He's 165 pounds. From a progress picture he sent me, it looks like he's about 20% body fat, just decent. Probably has, you can see his musculature pretty well. But his goal is to gain muscle mass and strength. His goal weight, at least for the short-term future, is 175 pounds. Again, we talk more about Ryan in episode 3 because his goals are very nutrition related. He's struggling with eating enough, but we'll go ahead and we'll talk about his workout routine anyways. So he says that he currently lifts 4 times a week with an upper-lower split. So that is going to be 2 upper body workouts a week and 2 lower body workouts a week. He says that he can't seem to eat enough to put on his size. He plays sports casually, and then he's lifted. He kind of claims to be a weightlifter bodybuilder nowadays, and he's done so for about a year and a half. He has access to a standard commercial gym. He spends about 75 minutes each workout. He has no injuries. There's only a few minutes from his gym, and he's just motivated because he loves lifting weights, and he wants to be bigger and stronger. And I think that's great. Well, let's look at his workout program now. Again, he does 2 upper body and 2 lower body. His first upper body workout is a bench press, a lat pull down, an incline press, bicep curls, and skull crushers. The lower body, his first lower body workout, is going to be a hex bar deadlift, a leg curl, and some sort of ab work. Then his second upper body workout is a cable row, a shoulder press, a lateral delt raise, a pec deck, a rear delt fly. Usually the pec deck and the rear delt fly are on the same machine. So let's just be very easy to rotate between the two. Do one while you rest from the other, a little superset. And then his second lower body workout is a squat, a leg extension, and a calf raise. Now here, admittedly, if you haven't caught on, I've told you that Noah and Ryan and Zach and Marcus are fake hypothetical people. So I have written all the information that I'm sharing with you. I came up with it. I wanted to try and write his upper lower workout to be pretty much something that I would recommend with just a couple changes. And so if any of you are listening to this podcast with the goal of what does he think a really, really good workout split is, then pay special attention here because this is probably going to be a lot closer to what I would want someone to do. So on his first workout, he's doing bench press and then lat pull downs. If you remember just what we talked about with Noah, that's the opposite movements. He's doing a push and then a pull, which is very common for an upper body workout because you're going to do some sort of a push and a pull because you're working your full upper body. So bench press and lat pull down, both of those he's going to be very, very strong at because he's fresh on both of them. Next up, he's doing an incline press after his bench press. I've already kind of mentioned that might be a little redundant, but it's not necessarily bad. I think he can continue to do it. Just be aware. You might separate those just if you had maybe like a 5 or 6 day workout routine because he's only working out 4 days a week. I think it works okay. Then he's going to be doing bicep curls and skull crushers, which is a sort of tricep extension, usually laying down. The weight kind of goes above your head. I think it's probably better for him for it to go a little behind your head so you can get it stretched better, but that's just why it's called a skull crusher if you're not familiar. That's overall is a pretty good workout. The only thing I would have to just mention is just the incline press. Maybe it's redundant, but also maybe totally not. His first lower body workout starts with the hex bar deadlift, then the leg curl, then abs. The hex bar deadlift is not an exercise I love or recommend in most circumstances. If you remember earlier in this episode, I talked about like a gymnast might want to do something where they can get really strong and do low reps, but maybe with less range of motion because they are worried about injuries and things like that, and that might be prudent. That kind of is when I would recommend a hex bar deadlift. The thing about it, though, if you've seen a hex bar, you can actually orient them in 2 ways depending on the bar. But a standard like barbell deadlift, the bar is just one straight line, right? So you have to reach down to that point to grab the bar and do your deadlift. The hex bar deadlift has handles that stick up maybe 5 or 6 inches above that, I guess, the middle of the plate where you put the plate on the bar, right? You don't have to reach down to that point because you have those handles. It's also a neutral grip, so you usually can grip on a lot stronger than a traditional barbell deadlift where, it's going to roll out of your hands unless you do something like a hook grip or a switch grip like you'll see powerlifters do. So again, the range of motion is a little smaller, and especially for a hypertrophy context, that is not ideal. And that's what his goal is. Remember, I've said that Ryan, he just wants to grow bigger muscles. And so for him, I am going to have him not do the hex bar deadlift anymore. I'm going to have him do a normal deadlift. If your goal is strictly hypertrophy, I might want you to have it do a deficit deadlift with a very stiff leg deficit deadlift. I've done those in the past and programmed into my own routines, but the thing about them is I just don't get as excited about them, and I prefer to do a strict deadlift where I can do a little more weight. And again, consistency, energy, focus, excitement, those really do impact your training and the results that you're going to see from them. I've mentioned this in our previous episode, part 1 of this little coaching series, that I don't train my legs for hypertrophy anymore because I have too hard of a time buying pants that I think fit me well. So I just train my legs for powerlifting now, and I bodybuild my upper half of my body. But anyways, Ryan has told me his goal is muscular hypertrophy, so for that, the hex bar deadlift is not a good idea. The other thing about the hex bar deadlift is that it is very easy to kind of get into more of an upright squat sort of position, just because the hex bar is like it's called a hex bar because it's a hexagon. And so it's this hexagon that you stand in the middle of, whereas a normal barbell deadlift, that bar is right above your midfoot, and you kind of have to stand in such a way and pull it in such a way that it's not going to scrape into your shins and your knees. And so you work more so your posterior chain than your quads. The hex bar deadlift, it's very common for people to just kind of get into a squat. And so rather than being any sort of a deadlift, the hex bar deadlift just becomes like a partial range of motion squat. And one of the reasons people like it so much is for that reason, that it is kind of just a partial range of motion squat. They usually can do a ton of weight without getting the backlash that they would if they were to actually do a squat with that range of motion. It just feels good. It feels strong. And that I understand. I really do understand that it's exciting to lift heavy weight, but I don't love that exercise. So for him, it's going to be a deadlift, probably even like a deficit Romanian or stiff leg deadlift. Then he's doing leg curl. We already discussed that leg curls are really important for the short head of the biceps femoris. So I really, really like that there. Then he's doing some sort of an ab workout, an ab crunch. Hopefully it's not, a silly endurance ab workout. It's just some sort of a crunch. So I like that, and I'll keep that there. Now, that is only a 3-exercise workout, but he's worked a good amount of muscles. Hopefully he's going with the intensity that he needs, and I think it is a good workout overall. His second upper body workout, we start with the cable row, and I've already kind of discussed, I like stuff that is chest supported, but I do cable rows myself. I think, especially if you do it right, if you use the right handle and the right attachment, you can get a really good range of motion on there, and it feels really, really good for your upper back. So just be aware of that, but it can be pretty good. Then he's going to do his shoulder press. Also, again, touching on the fact that he did a pull, and now he's doing a press. So he's probably going to be very fresh on both of those and see good adaptation there. He's doing a lateral delt raise, which is awesome. Then he's doing a pec deck and a rear delt fly. So the pec deck, of course, is going to train his pectoralis muscles, his chest muscles. And he hasn't trained his chest on this workout that I just described to you, his second upper body workout. It's common to want to do a pec deck or a chest fly with a dumbbell after you've done a press because it gives you more volume and things like that. And that's not what he's done, but I'm not saying that's how you have to do a fly or a pec deck. Looks like this is kind of the only exercise that he's doing twice a week. The only muscle that he's working twice a week. So maybe he just really, really wants a big chest. And so the fact that he's doing his bench press on his first upper body day, and then he's doing a pec deck on his second upper body day, is actually pretty good. He's probably going to see decent adaptations and grow his chest well. Hitting a muscle group twice a week, especially for hypertrophy, is pretty ideal. And then he's doing his rear delt fly again. He's done his lateral delt raise, and now he's doing his rear delt fly, working on his shoulders the same day he's done his shoulder press. You can do a front raise. That's something I see a lot, is people do a front raise, like a shoulder raise in front of their body, and it's to work the frontal head of the deltoid. But really, the shoulder press is going to work the front delt better than anything else. So if you want to do that for a little extra volume, sure, go ahead, but you shouldn't need to do that exercise. And then I've also seen, people do like a plate raise rather than using dumbbells. And, I think the reason that people do that is because a lot of plates have handles on them, and so it can be easy to do. But it's kind of like once you get to 45 pounds, you're done. You can't do a plate raise anymore unless somehow you can grip more plates. I would recommend, if you did want to do a front raise, to just use a dumbbell. Then to go to his second lower body workout, he's done a squat, a leg extension, and a calf raise. I think this workout is great. He's worked his quads, he's worked his glutes, he's adding a little more volume to his quads with that leg extension, the same way he added a little more volume to his hamstrings with that leg curl on his first lower body day. Now he's going to do a calf raise, and hopefully with a standing leg, and that is pretty nice. So to go over this again, I would actually keep it mostly the same unless he told me that he was interested in me changing it. He currently lifts 4 times a week. Is he able to work out 5 days a week, 6 days a week maybe? If he really wants to take his strictly hypertrophy training to the highest echelon that it can be in, then that's something I'd want to do, and I'd write a program for him there. But if he was going to do a 4-day-a-week program, and if any of you listening want to adopt a 4-day-a-week program that I think is pretty good, then his program with some modifications from me are bench press, lat pull down, could do an incline press after if you wanted to, then bicep curls and skull crushers. His first lower body day is going to be a stiff leg or a Romanian deadlift, maybe even standing on a plate so you can get some deficit and a bigger range of motion. Then he's going to do a leg curl. One quick note on the leg curl. If you do it in a machine, it's going to have a better force curve. The thing about the machine is that the force is always being applied exactly perpendicular to your limb, which is kind of how we want it to be. And so a lot of exercises like a press, chest fly is a great example of it. It's really, 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 really heavy at like this lengthened portion the chest fly is, and then it gets basically no weight at all because your bones are just supporting all the weight at the very top. Whereas on a machine, it's kind of an even force distribution throughout the whole range of motion, which is really good for hypertrophy. So a Nordic curl is really cool exercise and really good, great for athletes. However, the force curve of the Nordic curl is a lot like a chest fly. It gets really, really, really hard at the lengthened portion of the hamstrings and then pretty easy at the top. So for him, I want his leg curl to be a machine because he's interested in hypertrophy. He's going to do some sort of a heavy abdominal crunch. On his second upper body day, he's going to do some sort of a row, hopefully a chest-supported machine row, or he can still do a cable row with his elbows flared and pulling to the top of his chest. Then he's going to do a shoulder press, a lateral delt raise, and then he's going to alternate pec deck and rear delt flies. His second lower body day is a squat, a leg extension, and a standing calf raise. Pretty good overall. I'd like to take a quick break and thank the sponsors of today's episode. Fortunately, I'm kidding. I don't have any sponsors. Not yet, at least. I assure you that one day when I do get sponsors, assuming that one day I get sponsors, they will be products and companies that I trust, I use myself, and I genuinely would recommend to any of you guys. As it sits right now, I do not have any sponsors, and I just put on this podcast with my own time and my own money so that I can put out high-quality educational information about nutrition and exercise, because it's what I love to do. If you are enjoying or you're getting value from the things that I discuss in the episodes of this podcast, you could be my sponsor in a certain sort of way. There are some zero-cost ways you can support this podcast. You can give it a like or a 5-star rating, depending on the platform that you listen to. Like or comment this video on YouTube, or you can leave up to a 5-star review, I believe, on Apple and Spotify. You also can share this episode or this show with a friend or family member you think might enjoy it or benefit from it. Please subscribe on YouTube, or you can follow the show on Apple and Spotify. I know these things might seem silly, and I'm sure you hear lots of creators talk about how you need to subscribe to their YouTube channel, but really these small things, they boost the algorithm on these platforms. They help the platform understand that you guys who are listening are enjoying the information that I am giving out, and it helps push that information to more people and help more people benefit from this information. And so those small things that you do really, really do help support me as I make this podcast. Other things that you can do for cost ways are to work with me directly. I love nutrition and exercise coaching. It is my passion. I love getting to meet all of you guys that I coach, learn about your stories and your sports and your goals, and helping you work towards them. I offer nutrition and exercise coaching together. I believe my rates are relatively affordable. I just want to make enough money that I can put out this information and work with you guys. I don't want to overinflate my prices or anything like that. If you are enjoying the things that you're hearing and you want me to help you take your performance to the next level, you can email me at benpresslercoaching@gmail.com. You can comment on my YouTube videos and I will reach out to you. You can direct message me on Instagram or Facebook, and I would love to work with you. With that, let's go ahead and get back into the rest of this episode. We are now going to talk about Zach. Zach is our 32-year-old male. He is an accountant. He is 6'1", 220 pounds, and from a picture he sent me, it looks like he's about 30% body fat. Once again, I don't care to be super accurate on that, but it's good to get an idea of what our goals are. Goal body weight, for example. He says that his goals are to lose body fat mass while preserving muscle, and he has a goal weight of about 200 pounds. For his workout routine, he sent me a generic one that he got online, but he isn't super consistent with it. He wants to be healthy for his wife and kids, and he struggles with consistency and specifically with food cravings. He played baseball as a teenager, and nowadays he lifts weights in the morning 2 to 4 times per week. He has access to a standard commercial gym, and he spends about 75 minutes each workout. He says that he does not have any injuries he's sensitive to while training, lives only a few minutes away from his gym. Some of his favorite forms of exercise and physical activity are playing with his kids and playing basketball. Now, for his generic workouts program, this one, as I've already mentioned previously, I kind of came up with the program that I thought the hypothetical Noah and the hypothetical Zach did. And so I was kind of able to put in the talking points that I wanted to discuss. For those of you watching on YouTube, I did actually get a generic workout program online. So this is not one that I made up so that I could scrutinize it. It is one that I pretended I was Zach and I wanted to go online and find a generic workout program. And I found it and I printed it off, and I am excited to talk to you about it. Now, again, the thing with Zach is that he struggles with consistency. And we talk about really his consistency with his nutrition in episode 3, about how I'd write a nutrition coaching plan. And I think there is a lot of valuable information there about the tools of consistency. And we're going to apply a lot of those same principles to his exercise routine. Basically, we want it to be enough that he's adapting and getting results from it, but we don't want it to be so much that he feels like he can't be consistent with it and he feels like it's consuming his whole life and it's not enjoyable. And as I look at this workout routine that I found, I can understand why he might be feeling the way that he is. So this workout routine is a 3 days on, 1 day off workout program. So to do the whole program would take 8 days, and then you would restart it every 8 days. It looks like it has a chest day, an arm day, and a shoulder day. Then you would rest. Then it has a leg day, a back day, and an ab workout day, and then a rest day. And that is your 8 days. Now, before I even get into the workout itself, these workouts are training very specific muscle groups, and then it doesn't get trained again for another 8 days. And that, if you need 8 days to recover from one workout, you're probably doing something wrong, but really you're probably recovering from that in 3, 4, maybe it takes you 5 days, but then there's still 3 days where the muscle is just kind of sitting and idling. That's why having a workout like the push-pull legs or the upper lower, where you're hitting those muscles more frequently, especially in the context of hypertrophy, are very, very good. Now, outside of the context of hypertrophy, for things like strength, if you're just a power lifter, I'm doing a powerlifting meet soon. It's actually in 8 days. I'm going to be doing my first powerlifting meet. And so recently I've been doing very, very strict powerlifting training to really try and maximize how I'm going to do it this meet. And it's been a lot of 1 to 5 rep stuff. So singles, doubles, triples, 4 reps, 5 rep sets, and not much above that. But the thing about that is, even when you get to that type of training, you're using just a lot of energy from your central nervous system to send those strong electric impulses to your muscles to lift these heavy, heavy weights. But because, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it, it shouldn't be as fatiguing as it sounds. Because it's so low rep, it's really just central nervous system fatigue, and the muscular fatigue isn't so much there. Whereas hypertrophy training is kind of the opposite. There's muscular fatigue, but not so much central nervous system fatigue. So one recovers pretty well. You can train it twice a week. So even though like a heavy powerlifting style deadlift training and squat training and bench press training, you should be able to do those twice a week and be recovered enough to do them again. So really, if you need 8 days to recover from a workout routine, you're probably doing it wrong. And I actually used to train in a way where I kind of did something like that. I'd train a muscle once a week, and then I wouldn't train it for 7 more days until the next week, just because I was trying to combine them, the hypertrophy and the strength. I was trying to do a power building program, but I wasn't programming it the way you ought to program a power building program. And so I was just doing like crazy heavy weights for like higher reps than I should have been, and that's what was causing a ton of fatigue. And I think the 7 days, in my head, I was spending those 7 days building muscle and recovering my muscle, but really I was just eliminating fatigue, not growing muscle the way that I wanted to. So that already is a huge problem with this workout routine. The other thing is that we've said on Zach's questionnaire, he works out in the mornings 2 to 4 times a week. So this has him working out 5, 6, 7 days a week, or well, I guess not 7, but he's going to be training probably 5 or 6 days a week if he's following this program the way that he ought to be. But he says that he's only lifting 2 to 4 times a week. So if you're really following this, say you're doing 2 workouts a week, 3 workouts a week, then it's going to take you probably 2 weeks before you've trained the same muscle groups again. But then this plan just keeps getting worse. Like I said, I didn't make up this one to make fun of it. I found it online. I'm not going to tell you who wrote it because I don't know. I don't want to make fun of people, but this is not a good workout program really at all. I would not recommend it to anybody. Getting into it, his chest day goes as follows. He does a flat barbell bench press, and then he does a flat dumbbell fly. Then he does an incline barbell bench press, and then he does an incline dumbbell fly. Then he does dips, and then he does a pec deck or a machine fly. So I've already mentioned to you redundancy can be an issue in workout routines. The fact that, like, if someone said that their workout routine, they did a flat bench and then an incline bench and then dips, I'd be like, okay, well, that's a lot of chest workouts, but that's not necessarily bad. But the fact that he's doing a compound press and then a fly in the same way he did the press, and then another compound press and then a fly the same way he did it, and then another compound press and then another fly, to me is insane and way too much. He has done 6 chest exercises, and that's it. You're going to be very tired. You're not going to be giving very high quality reps or sets to these workouts at the end of the workout because you're so tired. This workout might be okay if you just removed all the flies and all you did was the compound presses. Again, I've talked about the flies are really just supposed to be a tool to increase the volume a little bit, but you're doing so many different chest exercises that you shouldn't need that. So it's just very redundant. And for that, I don't recommend it. Moving on to his arm day. If you thought the chest day was redundant, my goodness, his arm day is too. So he starts out with a barbell curl. Then he does an incline dumbbell curl, so sitting down on a bench. Then he's doing an alternating dumbbell curl. Then he does a concentration curl. Concentration curl, for those of you who don't know, is where you're kind of sitting on the side of a bench, and then you put your elbow or the back of your arm on the inside of your leg, and then you concentrate, I guess, just one arm at a time. So again, he's done barbell curls, incline dumbbell curls, alternating dumbbell curls, and then concentration dumbbell curls. He's done 4 different types of dumbbell curls. I can understand doing 2, maybe 3 types of bicep curls to try and emphasize different points, but it's called the bicep for a reason. There's only 2 muscles there. And I guess there's also the brachialis and the brachioradialis, but still, like, you shouldn't need 4 different types of bicep curls in the same workout. And if you can still get to your 4th bicep exercise and feel like you have the strength to do high quality bicep curls, then it means your first 3 sets of bicep curls, your first 3 exercises of bicep curls probably didn't do that good. You weren't working very hard. So what adaptation are you getting here? It's very, very redundant, and I would urge you to pick just 1 or 2 that you enjoy and you feel like are doing good for you, and just focus on them. Then in this same workout, because it's an arm workout, he does dumbbell tricep extensions overhead, and then he does skull crushers with a barbell, and then he's doing a tricep push down on the cable machine, and then he is doing dumbbell tricep kickbacks. So we're running the same thing, that he's doing 4 different exercises. Now, the tricep exercises, I do kind of like the variety because he's doing the overhead extension with the dumbbell. So he's getting that very, very stretched tricep because it's stretched at the shoulder as well. The skull crusher is going to work well, the lateral head of the tricep, and the tricep push down is just kind of the opposite of the overhead extension. Those are, if someone wanted to do those 3 tricep movements in the same workout, I would say okay. But still, then he does the kickback. I want to interject here that the dumbbell tricep kickback is probably the worst tricep exercise you could do, because it's limited by how much your rear delts can support at that top range of motion. And then it's a lot like, for example, the like a lateral delt where it gets so much heavier at the top, or a fly. It's a lot like that, but then it's also just unstable, and you really don't get a good tricep stimulus from that movement at all. Additionally, when somebody is doing that tricep kickback, a lot of times I'll see them, to get like their big range of motion, kind of curl their arm back up to think that they're getting a big stretch on their tricep, and they technically are, but there's no tricep tension in that stretch because you're actually having to use your bicep to get it there. So it's a stretch, sure, but there's no mechanical tension on your tricep in that stretch position. So it's just a dumb exercise. You should take it out of your workout if it's part of it. And then same thing, I really would just urge you to pick 1 or 2 tricep movements that you really enjoy and stick with them. That's what I do personally. Then, as the last bit of his arm workout, he is doing forearm curls and extensions. Again, the type where he is bending at the wrist rather than the fingers. His 3rd workout is a shoulder day. He starts with a behind the neck barbell overhead press. Barbell presses are not bad. I actually really like them because you can kind of get that bar all the way down and get a really deep stretch. When you're using a dumbbell, the size of the dumbbell actually kind of sometimes knocks on your shoulder first, and so you can't get as deep of a stretch. I like the barbell, but I like the dumbbell too, do whichever you want. But the behind the head is something that people do it with lat pull downs, and they'll do it with shoulder press, and it doesn't make sense at all. I think there's an injury risk for your shoulders and for your neck, and that's just not the direction that your shoulders are even built to push. So there's no advantage, and I think there's just risk and hazard there. So you can keep the overhead press by all means. You should keep the overhead press, but do it in front of your head, not behind. Then he's doing an Arnold press. That's a little bit redundant, again, as we've talked about, but not necessarily a terrible thing. The thing about an Arnold press, though, is that a lot of people don't really know the purpose of the Arnold press. So I've seen a lot of people, they do the Arnold press, and they get down, and then they just like kind of spin the dumbbell, and then they press back up. And they do a normal shoulder press, spin the dumbbell in their hand, and then they go back up. And the purpose of the Arnold press was not that. It was actually designed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, that's where it gets its name, to just get a really, really deep stretch and range of motion on that deltoid. So the reason the dumbbell rotates is so that it clears your body and you can pull it down further and get a better stretch on your deltoid. And then you rotate as you come back up. The purpose of the Arnold press is not just to rotate your hand, it's to get a deep, deep stretch. So it's a good workout. I like it a lot, but you just kind of have to know what you're doing. Then in this workout, he does a lateral delt raise, then a front raise, front deltoid raise. And again, we've talked about you probably don't need that, but it's okay if you want it. If you're going to do the behind the head overhead press and the Arnold press and then a front raise, at that point it's a little redundant and I don't recommend it. Does rear delt work, which is good, and then a shrug. So the rest of that shoulder day is pretty good. The leg day, he does, first of all, a squat. Squats are good, we've talked about. Then he does a leg press. Then he does a leg extension. Then he does a hamstring curl. Then he does the adductor machine. That's where you squeeze your legs together to the middle. And then he does a calf raise. The leg press there, especially, now I've talked about these redundancies several times. You're probably sick of me here saying it by this point. But when you're doing a flat bench and then a dumbbell bench, or especially a flat bench then an incline press, like it can be okay to have that redundancy. The squats, though, for many people are just so hard and using such a big muscle group that you really don't want to be redundant on a compound leg exercise. So if you're going to do squats, that's great. Don't do the leg press after. If you're going to do leg press, that's great. Don't do the squats before. If I had to pick one, I would say the squat rather than the leg press. The leg press can be a good exercise, but so many people just do such minimal range of motion on it that it's not really a good idea. You can go really, really deep. Just try and get range of motion. Range of motion is so good for you. It really helps grow your muscle. And I know it's hard and you can't lift as much weight, but that's okay. You just get a better lift. You get better results. The leg extension can be good to get some more volume. Hamstring curl, of course, we've said is awesome. You should include it. The adductor, I have mixed feelings about it. It's not that I dislike doing the adductor or the abductor stuff either. The abductor would be just the opposite of adductor, where you start in the middle and you have to pull your legs away from your body. It kind of works like your glute minor and stuff like that. And it's okay if that's your goal and you want, I don't know, a lot of people do them because they want those muscles to be strong, and that's okay. For me personally, I've noticed that doing a squat, like a freestanding barbell squat, actually works my adductors well enough that I don't feel the need to do them, and then I just don't really want to do the abductor. You don't need to do them if you don't want to. I think for his case, again, because this is just a generic workout program, he's probably not particularly passionate about it and does it because this workout says you should, and so I would just cut that out of his program. And then the calf raise, standing, good. Next workout, back workout. Sorry, I realize I'm taking so long. I have so many things I like to ramble about, and I thank you guys for listening to my rambling, but I will try and be a little more speedy with this. Starts out with a lat pull down. That's awesome. We've talked about the planes you can pull in. Doesn't really matter. Do what you like and are going to stick with and get really strong at. He does a low row, which after doing the pull downs works his upper lats more so than his lower lats like the pull down did. Does a barbell row. Again, we've talked about that before. Then he does a T-bar row. Those things I also think are pretty, you don't need to do both of them. Kind of pick one or the other. And at that point, it's kind of preference. I might technically, if you had to ask me which one I thought was more optimal, I would say the T-bar row. But I don't really like doing T-bar rows. I think if you had to ask me, I'd rather do a barbell row than a T-bar row, even though the T-bar row maybe is more optimal. Then he does the dumbbell pullover. That's kind of an old school exercise, and I like them. They feel cool to do. I don't really feel like they're the greatest back exercise. Basically, you lay down with your shoulder blades on a bench, like just a flat bench, and then you hold a dumbbell up, one dumbbell with two hands, and you just reach your arms back, and then you use your lats to pull it back to the starting position. There's debate whether it's actually like a lat exercise or if it's a chest exercise. Frankly, it could be a little bit of both. You're going to get a little bit of stimulus from both just because of the way they cross joints. It's, again, just for the sake of consistency and saving him time on his workout, I would probably just cut this out, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a pointless exercise. And then, as the last exercise of his back day, he's doing a deadlift. I know that's actually kind of common for people to do a deadlift on their back day. For me, it's a leg exercise. I do it on leg days. But if you want to do it on a back day, that's fine. And then his sixth workout, technically on day 7, is an ab workout. This workout has him do 20 bicycle crunches, a 30-second plank, 40 mountain climbers, 30 raised knee crunches, 20 Russian twists, and 12 jackknife sit-ups. So hopefully you already know what I'm about to say. Think about it for just a second, because I think you know what I'm about to say. I'm about to say that this is an endurance ab workout. For athletes who need to have ab endurance, this could be good. Gymnasts especially. I know lots of track athletes will do things like this, especially because these are working your hip flexors, the mountain climbers and the bicycle crunches, the jackknife sit-ups, they're working your hip flexors, and that can help you be a really, really fast runner. It's not a pointless workout, but if your goal is to just grow your abdominal muscles and get them stronger, like I'm sure his goal is, because he just kind of wants to be fit and strong and aesthetic and have a physique that he's proud of, then all you need for your abs is a heavy ab crunch. You don't need to have this whole ab day. I used to have a whole ab day myself when I was working out, just my bedroom in high school. I would have a whole ab day because I did things like gymnastics and cross country and track where they had us doing these long endurance ab workouts. So that's just what I knew. That's what I thought was best. But now that I just kind of do bodybuilding and powerlifting, I understand that really I can just get all the benefit I need from an ab crunch. And so that's what I do. So he sent me this workout, Zach has, and this isn't even a workout that I'm going to try and fix. I'm going to look at it and understand that this is how he's used to training. I probably am going to write him a brand new workout routine. Brand new. I'm probably going to write a 3 or 4 day. I like I've said, the upper lower that Ryan said that he was doing, right? Similar to that. Maybe he wants to work out 5 days a week because he's an accountant and he goes at the same time each day on a work day. Whatever that is, I don't like this workout. I've given you lots of comments about why I don't like it. It's not something that I'd fix because you'd have to combine lots of days together, cut out workouts, see how long it takes him. I've noticed that for me, for example, the same workout that might take, my wife is a great example. I go to the gym with my wife oftentimes, and she will finish the exact same workout as me, like 30 minutes before I do. Just because, when you get to a certain point in your lifting career, the warm-ups take longer, and because you need to take more steps to do that. And when I'm doing stuff with dumbbells, it just takes me a long time I get tired picking them up and waddling them over to my bench. And I just take a longer time to lift than other people. So just in his case, I'd want him to try out a workout, and he says, I can't do it. It takes me 90 minutes, and I only have 60, or I only have 70 minutes. Then we'll cut it back, and we'll probably get rid of some of those redundancies, just focus on the bread and butter of these workouts. Then our last example coming in at the very end is Marcus. Marcus is a 23-year-old male. He is a former offensive lineman. He's just graduated college. He's moving on to the workforce. He's not going to be part of a football team again. He's not going to have coaches and athlete nutrition centers on campus anymore. He's really just kind of trying to figure out his own way and take care of his health. He is 6'4". He is 310 pounds. From a picture he sent me, looks like he's about 35% body fat. His goal is that as he's just graduated from college, he wants to lose some of the extra weight that he was carrying around for the purpose of being a linebacker. He has a goal weight of 240 pounds. Again, we've talked a lot about him in the nutrition episode and the nutritional tools that he can use for reaching his weight goal. As we talk about his exercise today, he is used to lifting and practicing 5 times per week with the football team. It says he usually spends 3 hours a day practicing. So usually he'll do some sort of a lift, then he'll do some sort of agility or speed or power exercises and drills, and then he practices plays and he practices football. So he's used to spending about 3 hours a day on his training. He has family who has had health issues due to their weight, and he doesn't want to turn out like that. That is his motivation to reach his goals. He worries, however, that since he doesn't have coaches anymore, he won't be motivated to do the things that he knows he needs to do. He has experience of just playing football and presumably lifting weights along with that since middle school. At the very least, he's probably been lifting weights since high school. He has access to his standard commercial gym, and he has a history of a torn Achilles tendon, but he's okay now. And then he lives only a few minutes away from his gym. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time going into his workout routine, like with his torn Achilles tendon, what I'm going to do to be mindful of that. Again, I'm not a PT. I'm not any sort of a doctor or physician. But really, I'm going to be kind of careful of his like sprinting. If I was going to tell him to do sort of sprinting workouts and his calf raises. This is like a very good example of something that on my 30-minute like Zoom call with a new athlete that I'm coaching, what I want to ask about. I see in his questionnaire, he says he has a torn Achilles. I say, how long ago was that? Was that high school? Or was that a couple years ago in college? What are you able to do? Like, does it hurt? Are you worried about it getting re-injured if you were to do like a calf raise with a big stretch at the bottom? Maybe he says, no, I have no problem at all. Just thought you'd ask, so I told you. I'd say, great. I wouldn't take it into consideration, really, even. But otherwise, I would just get, his opinion from there. The nuances of that, he would tell me in that Zoom call. So getting that out of the way, I don't really need to do much with it. But anyways, Marcus is a little tricky because the thing is, well, as I've done with these other examples, they've kind of given me their workout routine, and I've kind of told you what I like and don't like and what I would do to optimize it. Marcus's workout routine is to do what the football coach tells him to do for 3 hours, and that's obviously not something he's going to do anymore because he doesn't have a coach, and presumably he doesn't have 3 hours a day to train anymore either. So the first thing I really want to get a feel for is, now that he's graduated, does he think he's going to be more inconsistent due to a lack of structure in his workout and in his training? Or does he think that he's going to be more consistent just because he has habits, right? He's been working out for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 4 years in college. So maybe he's going to just has that as a habit. And if he were to start just not training anymore, he would feel like that was really weird. And so I would want to get a feel for that with him. If he thinks he's going to be more inconsistent, then I want him to be training 4 days a week, and I'll probably have him do something like the upper-lower split. But if he does think that he's going to be pretty consistent, I'll probably have him do 6 days a week. Or, he said he works out 5 days a week with football team. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll have him train 5 days a week. And then whichever one it is, I want to have him do some sort of cardio every single day. Whether that's a walk in the park, I'm sure you've heard lots of people talk about just get 10,000 steps a day. That's a great guideline. Do sorts of cardio that you enjoy. Maybe he's going to join a recreational pickup flag football team. Anyways, especially as his goal is to lose weight, the diet is going to be the most important tool there, but doing things like cardiovascular training and just moving your body, getting lots of physical activity is going to be a very, very important step and a very important tool in his weight loss, especially because he wants to lose 70 pounds. So let's say I'm just going to write him a 5-day workout routine. And now I think this is where we're really getting into the fact. At the beginning of the episode, I said it's going to be a little more unscripted. I want to go into it right now, and I'm just going to go ahead and write him out a sample 5-day workout routine. Say that he's used to certain types of activity. What do I want him to do? And I won't necessarily get into the rep ranges and the rest times and everything like I would for a client for time's sake, but let's figure it out together. So when he was doing his football workouts, he was doing a lot of compound lifts. He was doing a lot of Olympic lifts like clean and jerks. I know that's something a lot of football teams will want their athletes to practice and get better at is their power clean. He's used to doing some accessories, probably just with his teammates to get big, good-looking muscles, bicep curls, lateral delt, raises. He's like med ball slams and throws. He's used to doing like sled pushes. And just doing a lot of stuff for like speed and power and footwork drills. So the first thing, as I've said, is that those first 6 exercises, they're all tied for first. Everybody needs to do them every day. So let's say we're having him do five workouts a week. Let's have 2 of them be leg days, or more so leg focus days. So I'm going to go ahead and put a squat on one of the days and the deadlift on the other day. Now, like I said, it's good to try and do these exercises twice a week if you have a really, really specific goal in mind. But he just says he's trying to be healthy. I'm sure he wants to keep up a lot of the strength that he has from football, but he's not doing a bodybuilding show. He's not doing a powerlifting meet. He's not on a competitive football team anymore. So I think he'll still be able to see pretty good results just keeping and maintaining his strength, gaining a little here and there, doing a squat and deadlift just once a week. But again, assuming that he is doing ongoing coaching with me, maybe we figure some things out and we can get it to where he is doing pretty much each one of these exercises twice a week. Really, if you could get to the point where you are doing all 6 of these exercises twice a week, I think that'd be pretty good. Then let's say that he is going to do, I've mentioned how much I love the opposite exercises, so like the vertical and the horizontal, so you're doing like a bench press and a row in the same day. For the sake of this, let's not do that because I feel like I've included that example several times in the episode. Let's have him do like a very standard push-pull. In fact, with a 5-day-a-week split like this, it's very common to do something like a push-pull legs, upper-lower. So I've talked about if you do a 6-day-a-week, you can do push-pull legs, that's 6 days. If you do 4 days a week, you can do upper-lower. 5 days a week, you do a push-pull legs, upper-lower. So you know what? That's what I think I'm going to have him try and do. I'm going to have him do push-pull legs, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, push-pull legs, and then do an upper and a lower body workout. So let's say that he's going to be doing some sort of a squat, because I'm just starting at the leg exercises is what I have on my list here. And then I'm going to have him do, I like putting calf raises together with a squat, so we're going to have him do a calf raise. And then I know a lot of football teams and athletic teams that like to do the hex bar deadlift. I've already talked about why I don't like it, but maybe it's something he's used to and he enjoys doing. I think it might be a good sort of mix of a squat and a deadlift to add as a second exercise on this 3rd day. So maybe I could do a hex bar deadlift, or maybe I could just have him do, I could have him do no other variation of deadlift. But let's just say that. We're going to have him do a little bit of hex bar. Then one thing I also like to do, and this is just, I can say this off the top of my head because I'm used to kind of scheduling it there, is I like to do shrugs on the same day that you do something like a squat or at least like abs. And you know what? Let's do abs. So on Wednesday, he's going to have some sort of an ab crunch. So we're looking at squat, calf raises, a hex bar deadlift, and an abdominal crunch on Wednesday. On Friday, we're going to start him with a deadlift. We're definitely going to do a leg curl, whether that's in a machine or a Nordic curl. So we're going to do a deadlift and a leg curl, so we like that. And then I'll have him do a sled push, because that's something that he said he is used to. Probably get his heart rate up and kind of help him burn a few extra calories. Not a substantial, super meaningful amount, but hey, it's something he's used to, something he does a lot, and then it gets a little extra volume on the squat, or on his quads, because we've done it Wednesday. Now we'll get a little bit of it on Friday by means of that sled push, and then we'll have him do some sort of a shrug. Now, a shrug, I really like to do like a dumbbell leaning shrug. One thing I've seen, I think they called it like a gorilla shrug, is where you kind of get in like this gorilla stance where you kind of like leg squatting and like hands down on the ground, but with kettlebells. The thing about kettlebells is they won't roll out of your hand like a dumbbell. So for a lot of people, they're easier to hold on to. And so you just kind of shrug up one while you press off the other and then alternate. And I think they called it a gorilla shrug. And I think that is a pretty cool exercise to do. Then let's get into his The other ones, we're looking for a vertical press, horizontal press, vertical pull, horizontal pull. So again, Monday his push day. So let's have him do a barbell bench press, barbell press. We're going to have him do a shoulder press. Again, I've talked about those redundancies and how the shoulder press might not be as strong, but we will say that this is okay, and we can fine-tune it in the future. We just want to get him something that he's used to and gets him moving. He's probably ought to get a good amount of muscle mass, and we just want to do him something that will keep it all up and keep him being pretty healthy and fit. And then let's go ahead. I think on that upper body workout on Thursday, I'm going to have him do an incline press, and then hopefully that kind of might be a little bit of best of both worlds between the chest and the shoulders there. So we're going to do an incline press, and I'll let him choose if that's going to be dumbbell or barbell. Continuing on this push day, we are going to do a tricep extension, and we are going to do... we could do a dip, but we've already done so much for our chest. I don't really want to do that. Maybe I'll have him do a little bit of a forearm work on this Monday workout. Then for his pull day, I'm going to have him start... I guess it kind of depends on his preference, if he'd rather do rows first or pull downs first, whichever one he really wants to be stronger. I think for most people, their upper back is a little more lacking than their lats. So we're going to have him do, hopefully he has a chest-supported row. I'm going to assume that he has a chest-supported row at his machine. So he's going to do that. There's going to be his horizontal pull. Then we'll go straight into a lat pull down. Lat pull downs especially can be beneficial for people who are heavier like this, as opposed to doing a chin-up, because if you're going to do a chin-up, you need to find some way to do it assisted or with a band, and lat pull-downs are really just great for everybody. If you're not strong enough, or maybe you're too heavy to do a lat pull-down, if you're not strong enough or too heavy to do a chin-up or a pull-up, then a lat pull-down is just a very accessible option for you. So he's doing his row, he's doing his lat pull-down. Here, I'm going to go ahead, he's going to do rear delt work. We're doing a little bit of shoulder work. This will be our shoulder day. Let's see, rear delt, and you know what? Going back, let's go ahead and put his lateral delt on Monday with his push workout. So lateral delt there, rear delt with his pull workout. Then he's going to do some sort of a bicep curl. And then let's go back to Thursday, where he's doing his upper body day. So far, all we have is an incline press. So now this is going to kind of depend on his goals. For me personally, I want my upper back to be more developed, so I put a little more emphasis on it. I would do just another sort of chest-supported row, maybe a cable upper back row to just kind of get a little more variety in there. So I'll say a cable row. Maybe you could even do something like a face pull. I know the face pull is a little more biased to the rear delts. It's not a bad thing. I guess what I'm saying is you might not be able to go so heavy that you're getting good stimulus on your traps and rhomboids, but it could be a good move. Maybe he wants to do a little bit more of biceps and triceps, but maybe just a set or two on each. So we'll do some bicep and tricep stuff. And then maybe we'll have him do one more lateral delt, just because I know all the gym bros love to get big boulder shoulders. So we'll have him do his lateral delts again. So then I'm going to go down my list. He's going to squat, hinge, vertical press, vertical pull, horizontal press, horizontal pull, lateral delt, bicep, tricep, leg curl, calf raise, abs, rear delt, traps, forearms. And then we're getting things like dips, upper lat, glutes, hip flexors, lower back, which I didn't include those last few. But looks like we got a pretty solid workout program going on right now. So there we go. I'll send that off to him now, and I'll probably give him a little more input and advice on the technique and ideas of progressive overload and the rep ranges and the rest times and tutorials. All those different things are things that I definitely include. When I coach somebody, I don't just do it this quick. I'm trying to expedite a little bit for the sake of the podcast, but I think that this would be a pretty good 5-day-a-week workout program, and I'm glad that I get to give you guys a glimpse into that. And I guess that will conclude us for Marcus. Lastly, at the end of this episode, I want to talk about cardio. Just very briefly, a word about cardiovascular training. Now, I would say in general, a lot of the cardiovascular training, it really depends on your sport and who the athlete is going to kind of come from your practices, and it's going to be the job of your coach. Of course, a strength and conditioning specialist is in charge of your conditioning as well, which usually means cardiovascular conditioning. Things like high-intensity interval training are common among athletes. The thing is that they can be very hard on your joints and be pretty fatiguing. And, I mean, on one hand, take you away from your weight training that you need to do, but really what it is just take you away from your sports and the real training that you're going to do. You're sore and achy from the high-intensity interval training. So I don't love that. If I were to do a sort of high-intensity interval, I like to do it on something like an assault bike, or at the very least do it on like a turf field where it's going to be a little bit softer impact. Or the assault bike, of course, is like very low impact, if any impact, because your leg's always moving in a circle. So it should be a little less fatiguing on your joints. It's just like usually high intensity. If you're doing like sprints, the sprinting is just really, really hard on your ankles and knees and hips. And so I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm not trying to scare you away from sprinting, saying it's so fatiguing. I hope that's not what you heard me say. But if you're doing that on top of everything else in your training, that's when it could start to be sort of problematic. If your goal is to just increase your VO2 max and your athletic threshold, you can actually accomplish that by doing a pretty short high-intensity interval training. I know that a lot of interval training is done 20, 30-minute workout. You could do it 6, 8, 10 minutes and get a pretty good adaptation, and then do a little easier steady state there. I will say I like to think I can hold my own when it comes to talking about cardiovascular training and how to improve, the heart rate zones and everything. Like, I know what I'm talking about, but it's not my specialty. Again, it's good to listen to people who admit when they don't know, because then you know that they know they're talking about what they say they do know. And I hope to be that case with you guys. Really what I just like to see is activity. There's a difference between exercise and physical activity. Exercise is really like your intent is to go out and do something that's going to create a adaptation in your body and in your fitness. Physical activity is just anything. It's walking your dog. It's skateboarding because you like to skateboard. It's anything where you're just moving around and using your body. Really what I want to do, especially in the case of like Marcus, is just get him doing a lot of physical activity. Zach as well, his goal is to be cutting weight. So going on walks and playing with his kids in the park, chasing him around and throwing a Frisbee. I think all of those things are really, really great ideas. The more you can gamify it, the better. As I've said in previous episodes, I work for the fire department in my town, and one of our favorite things to do as a shift for our exercise is to play Ultimate Frisbee. I think that's awesome because I've loved Ultimate Frisbee long before I started working here, but it's kind of like high-intensity interval training. There's oftentimes a lot of sprinting in a certain direction to catch or to block somebody, trying to catch the Frisbee, and then in between that, you're kind of just walking at a decent pace or jogging around the field, trying to figure out where you need to be. So it's a sort of high-intensity interval training. Benefit is we do it on a turf field, so it's less impact. And it's just gamified. So yeah, sometimes you feel sore and achy after it, but it's a good workout. It really improves your cardiovascular training. For somebody like Noah, who's trying to be better at soccer, he said that he runs 3 times a week in the morning, and they're probably, long runs, just trying to, because in soccer, you're running around the whole time. He's probably going on long runs at, maybe a zone 3, maybe a zone 2 cardio. Zone 2, if you're not familiar with heart rate zones, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Zone 1 is pretty much resting. Zone 2 is just like slightly elevated heart rate. A guideline I've heard said lots of times is like you're going on a run, but you could have a conversation with someone you're running with. Zone 3 is kind of just past that, where you might not be able to have a good conversation because you're breathing a little more heavy. Zone 4 is you're really, really pushing it. And then 5 is like sprinting. So in a high-intensity interval training, you'd probably be or jumping between zone 4 or 5 and zone 2 or 3. Anyways, he's probably doing like some zone 3 more long runs. He's probably not doing much of the zone 4, zone 5 on his, the days that he said he's running, maybe a little bit of zone 2. And I think that's great for him because his goal is to increase endurance. Now, one thing about Zone 2 that can be really beneficial about it is that it can actually just increase the efficiency of the mitochondria, of the muscle cells. And so, over time, you spend that time in Zone 2 cardio, you just become more efficient at using fuel and creating the energy that you need to perform these tasks. So there's lots of different, maybe I just got to make a different episode about cardiovascular training in general as I come to learn even more about it. But basically, all I'm trying to say is that take your goal. Is your goal endurance? Is your goal overall fitness? If your goal is overall fitness, frankly, I would say just get physical activity. Think of it less as exercise and find physical activity that you enjoy to do. Like Ultimate Frisbee is a great example of that. You can get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of time doing high-intensity interval training. As I've mentioned, you could do like a 10 or 15-minute workout and get a great stimulus, even though a lot of workouts are 20 to 30 minutes. You could get a lot of good adaptations that are very meaningful there. But I'd say the biggest levers you can pull are just physical activity, getting lots of steps in, and doing 2 to 4 exercises, workouts a week for cardiovascular training specifically, if that's something that suits you. And it's going to depend on your sport. Cardio is a good tool for weight loss, but again, the driver and the most meaningful thing you can do is control your calories, because it could take an hour to burn 300 or 400 calories jogging or running or walking, but you can eat that same 300 or 400 calories in just a few minutes. And so you really just need to be mindful of the foods that you're eating. Again, go back, you could listen to episode 2 about manipulating body composition. You could listen to episode 3 about nutrition coaching. Got all those good ideas there. Again, I hope that in this episode, and really in this 2-episode mini-series about how I write these coaching plans, I've given you valuable insight into what the meaningful things are that you can do. Hopefully giving you some ideas on how you can improve the things that you are doing. If you are interested in working with me directly, please reach out. I would be thrilled to meet you and help you work at your sport and see the improvements that we can make, how much better you can get at doing the things that you love. If you're enjoying the things that I'm teaching you in this podcast, even if you don't want to work with me, again, please like or rate the show or the video, comment on YouTube, ask me questions. I do read all the comments, and I want to give you more input to any of the questions that you might have. Direct message me on Instagram. Please reach out. I love hearing from you guys and love teaching. This is what I love to do. I thank you for joining me on today's episode. This has been The Science of Sports Performance.